Hello, everybody. I'm super excited to bring the one and only Peter Lohman to the table today to tell you a little bit about his company, how they're operating, and specifically beforehand of what it was like in their operations to the idea of what interested him in Lineage in the first place, and then how they've been experiencing Lineage since then.
Thanks for having me on, Drea. So I'm Peter Lohman. For anyone who doesn't know me, I own a residential property management company in Columbus, Ohio. So that's where I'm sitting here in our office. We manage about 750 rentals in and around the Columbus metro area. I've been in the business professionally for about 14 years now and started RL property management from zero. We had no clients, no units. I had no background in the industry. I come from an engineering background and just kind of figured everything out as we went along and grew slow and steady over the years. We've got a great team here at RL now, over 30 people, including in-house maintenance. In the last few years, I've kind of poked my head up and become involved in the broader property management industry. You may have seen my newsletter, you may have heard my podcast, and I also co founded a paid community for property management business owners with Wolfgang Kroski called Crane. So that's what's keeping me busy these days. Excited to chat with you, Drea, a little bit about how we're using Lineage at RL Property Management and why we're working with them because we're pretty picky about our vendors and what value we are seeing and that our owners are seeing from Lineage.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. We just need a whole resume of all the great things that you're doing in this world. So, at the end of the day, I would love to know what operations was like and the communication with your owners was like pre even finding out about Lineage, just to kind of get a grasp of what was happening and the feeling of it. And then, whenever you heard about Lineage, why you thought that this might be a great opportunity.
Yep. So as we grew and we brought on what came to be hundreds and hundreds of property owner clients, and we started to have a churn problem where owners would decide to sell and we would lose that account. And we don't have a brokerage in house. And so it was kind of a double whammy because we would lose the management stream of income and we didn't even really get anything on the sale on the brokerage side. And as I started to look at this and experience it, I realized that a lot of these property owners who sold were making essentially irrational decisions. They were making emotional decisions and they did not have the tools they needed to make a financially savvy decision on whether to sell their property, hold their property, or buy additional rental properties. Of course, all of our property owners have always had their monthly owner statements and they always have had access to their rental owner portal that they can log on to. And they can always call our office anytime and speak with us. That was always true. But the fact is that property owners, they're not professional investors. They're not professional real estate investors, 95% of them. And so even though all of the data was available to them in theory, they did not know how to interpret that data. They did not know how to assemble that data and they did not know how to understand how to think about the performance of their rental property. So they were basically just looking at dollars in their bank account as a barometer to understand, am I making money in real estate or not? And of course, if you're listening to this, you know that there's way more to quote making money in real estate than the amount of your monthly distribution. You have property appreciation, you have principal pay down if there's a mortgage, you have cash flow coming in from the property and other tax benefits as well. So there's at least four, different ways that owning rental property can add to your wealth and grow your wealth. And we also know that time in the market is much more important than timing the market. So the longer you can hold a piece of property, the more likely you are to become wealthy with real estate. In fact, many of you, if not all of you, probably know somebody local in your area, some old guy who talks about, oh, I used to own that property over there and I used to own that land where that development is now. And oh yeah, I sold this fourplex for $40,000 in 1980 and now it's worth 4 million. And we all think to ourselves, wow, what if you had just held on to those properties all that time? You'd be fabulously wealthy. And that's still true today, right? So all of our property owners, a generation and a half from now, are going to be saying those same things. And so it's our job to help them weather the emotional roller coaster of owning rental property so that they can get to the pot of gold at the end of that roller coaster, kind of mixing metaphors here. There's really two limitations that property managers have to actually executing on what I just described: tools and time. We don't have time to sit down and have one-on-one conversations with every property owner every year and educate them on investing and educate them about the state of the market and educate them about the current value of their home and, what's their mortgage, what's their interest rate, what are the refinance options. That's incredibly high value activity and it's very time intensive. And we're busy doing property management. What I just mentioned could be described as asset management. So, and we're not also, by the way, getting paid for that either. And so I just ignored it. The other problem is that we don't have the tools to do that. We have various reports we can get from our tools that we're using, like Buildium, Mapfolio, and others. But what you really want is a visual dashboard that, like a professional investor would have, showing all of the income and expenses for the portfolio, which you could drill down by property, including things like taxes, insurance, mortgage payment, capital expenses, other items that the owner may have paid outside of your system. So without a tool like that, where you can kind of zoom in, zoom out, different time windows, and calculations showing things like cash on cash return, return on investment, return on invested capital, and all of these financial terms with all of the data shown visually, that's what you really need to have an intelligent, zoomed out discussion with a property owner about their long term wealth building. You can't have that discussion on the tail end of a phone call that started with them complaining about a $30 toilet repair. It's not the right frame of mind. It's not the right time. It's not the right tools. So you really want the right tool dashboard to help get the owner in the right frame of mind to have this discussion. And you need an expert who has time to have these one-on-one conversations with the owner. So now I've framed up the problem. We're getting a marketing education as we
No
go along here.
kidding. Yeah,
You frame
great
up the
job.
problem, right? Okay, so you're a smart listener. You see that I framed up the problem, and in comes the solution. Okay, so truth is, Lineage does solve these problems, and that's why we worked with them and we brought them in several years ago. Their team has these one-on-one conversations with our property owners, and their team has a dashboard that plugs into our tool, which is Buildium, and plugs into a whole bunch of other tools. And they work with the property owner to get any data that they don't have to show them a fantastic, fancy, slick looking dashboard that does exactly what I was describing a moment ago. So that's kind of the summary of the problem as I saw it and where Lineage stepped in for us.
If I heard you correctly, when and as you guys grew, you simply were not having the conversations about the assets, mainly because, yes, you didn't have the time nor the data resource tool, but then also you said that you don't get paid for that. That's not something you wanted to do. Can you clarify a little bit more around that for me, just how you were feeling and what that meant for you, and the change that came with that continued communication with your owners?
Yeah. So, in terms of the not getting paid for it thing, what we talked about there, those asset management functions, that's a highly valuable conversation with an expert. If you think about it in terms of money management, if anyone listening works with a financial advisor, they often charge 1% of assets under management to have those type of high level asset allocation, asset management discussions. Think about what that would be if you have a rental owner with 4 single family homes that are each worth, I don't know, 500,000, so that would be $2 million of assets. And so if you charged 1% of assets under management, that would be an extra 20K annually on top of the management fee, because the management fee is not for this. The management fee is separate and is always gonna be there. So I was kind of thinking to myself, like, yeah, if you pay me 20 grand, I'll take the time to do this analysis, sit down with you and have a really in-depth conversation, give you advice, give you access to all of my, career in real estate investing, asset allocation. But for, $130 a month, not really on the table for me. So that's the getting paid for it side.
The other part of that question was basically, did you notice a difference in your owners and maybe even their happiness or how they're feeling about the communication side of things? Because you and I both know that a huge amount of owner satisfaction has to deal with communication.
Hmm.
And so with your owners, once they started getting this regular communication from someone who this is their only job, right? From the Lineage side of making sure that we're proactively reaching out to these owners, was there a difference that you noticed in the owner satisfaction of your company at that?
Yeah. So that's a great point. After we onboard with Lineage, basically the way it works is we give Lineage our owner database. So here's our property owners, here's the properties they own, here's their contact information. And then Lineage reaches out on behalf of our company and asks these owners, hey, would you like to have a complimentary discussion with our team to talk about the performance of your property and see about some opportunities? So I think it's like about half of our owners have opted into those conversations on a regular cadence, if I remember right. And from what we can tell, it's been fantastic. A number of those property owners have gone on to purchase additional rental properties, mostly in our market, some in other markets, which we get paid for, by the way, if they do that. And we've had other owners be able to successfully refinance instead of selling, which is huge for us because then we maintain that stream of management fee revenue. And the owner now has cash freed up to go do whatever it was they thought they were going to have to sell the property to do, like send their kid to
Mhm.
college, buy another home or whatever it is. So, I can't say that I've like spoken to all these owners and asked them about Lineage, but I think the results speak for themselves, which is that our churn is down. I've been talking about that a lot in the newsletter. I'm sure Lineage has had a great part in that. And our owners, it seems like more every month, more and more of our owners have opted into working with the Lineage team. And then we're seeing more and more results in terms of transactions that is also validating it. So it seems that the direction is up and to the right in terms of number of owners taking advantage of Lineage and what they are able to do with Lineage, once they're kind of fully onboarded and have gone through a few of these portfolio review sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, the getting paid for if they take advantage of this education that they're getting is a revenue source that any and all property managers get to take advantage of, which is a beautiful thing. And I love that specifically because I know property managers are always looking to increase their profit margin and increase the revenue. And we are able to have those $20,000 calls at zero cost.
Hmm.
So it is I love that, and thank you for bringing that perspective to me that I haven't thought about before. And on that front, as you're sitting there talking about the communication with your owners, curious if you've heard from your team of what the difference it has made in their daily lives of their jobs in property management, because I know for a fact, just like you said, with that owner who gets upset about that toilet repair because now they're seeing this negative cash flow, they're calling in. And in reality, the way that I expect it to be happening is we get to be that resource, to be that diffuser for your team or to show that owner what their property and asset is doing as a whole rather than worrying and having a meltdown, so to speak, about a toilet repair for that month.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard nothing but good things about my team. And my team is pretty quick to bring problems to me and is candid with me about everything. So I think my team is always happy to introduce Lineage as part of the onboarding process. And now that we are set up where each rental owner is assigned to a specific property manager at my company. So we have three property managers. They each have about 130 clients or so. And so those property managers are able to introduce Lineage to the clients, the property owner clients, and help ensure that there's a smooth handoff. And the property managers are happy to do that because, like you said, that's just going to be another ear for the owner, another
Mhm.
source of rational thought and objective decision making and education for that property owner. So it's a real resource for the property managers. And so the property managers have every incentive to hook up the rental owners with your team at Lineage and make sure that's a smooth handoff and make sure that the owner's taking advantage of that. The way I think of Lineage is as a done for you asset management. In the same way that Second Nature is kind of like a done for you resident benefit package where they handle all of the back end billing and setup and compliance and everything like that. We use them for our master renter's insurance policy. That's how Lineage works for asset management. So it's a done for you service, DFY, I guess, for the property manager. From that perspective, it's kind of a no brainer. There's no costs like to me to onboard with Lineage, or there's no monthly fee that I'm paying Lineage. The biggest thing is just, you as a property manager listening to this, it's sensitive to hand over your customer database to a third party. That was the part that I specifically spent a lot of time on and would encourage anyone listening to as well. You don't just hand out your customer database to anybody, but due to the nature of what Lineage does for you or does for us, that has to be a part of it. So just, that is really the only downside that I can think of is if for some reason you were like worried about that, which, I don't think you need to be. But other than that, once you've done that handoff and what will happen is there's initial communication from your team to introduce Lineage to the customers. And then from there, Lineage picks it up and runs with it. That's about it.
You're just answering my questions before I
Mm,
even ask
mm,
them. So
not my first rodeo.
this is not your first rodeo. That's very much where I was gonna go is like, how did you hear about Lineage? So I'd still love to hear how you would
Yeah.
have heard about Lineage. But the next thing would have been, what gave you pause, if anything, before moving forwards?
Yep.
So since you already answered one, how did you hear about Lineage in the first place, Peter?
Yeah. So the way I heard about it is Thad pulled me aside at a conference several years ago, 2, 3 years ago now. And so Thad Tarkington, co-founder of Second Nature, he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, we're kind of in stealth mode on this new startup. It has to do with asset management. I want to get your feedback and kind of show you what we're thinking." And he showed me like an early version of the dashboard. It was basically a mock-up and explained a lot of what I just explained and what the business opportunity was for them and for the property manager and for the rental owner. And it all just made sense to me. It was a lot of things I had already been thinking about, which is that we know owners want this asset management function. In fact, if you look at the 2026 PM Trends report that I did with Jordan Moyla, we surveyed over 500 rental owners with Harris Poll, and one of the questions we asked them was like, which of the following services would you be willing to pay extra for and receive from your property manager? We had 7 different things they could pick from. One of them was asset management. That was the number one response that we got, that owners would be willing to pay extra for to get
Mm.
from their property manager. Well, guess what? With Lineage, they don't have to pay extra, but it's clear there's demand for that service at any price. So anyway, a couple of years ago when I spoke with Thad, I could sense even then that there was a demand for this, and I felt like if we could execute well on it at RL Property Management, it would only help our company because the more educated and informed our rental owners are about real estate investing, frankly, the less likely they are to sell, like I talked
Mhm.
about earlier. So I wanted my owners to know about real estate investing and to have an objective, cohesive view of their portfolio performance with all of the factors, not just the monthly cash flow and not just the $4,000 furnace repair from last month on their mind. I wanted them to be able to have a global view of asset performance. And so that's why I got really excited about it because all this data is in our systems, but no one has ever assembled it in a compelling way to tell a story
Mm.
about the asset and about the potential for that asset over time. So, like all the reports that your owners get right now, they're all historical. They're showing past performance. No one, unless you work with Lineage, ever sits down with a rental owner and forecasts or projects into the future performance of the asset. And that's where all of the returns lie is in the future. When all you can talk about is the current and the past, all you think about is expenses. But when you forecast out 5 or 10 years with some rent increases and some expense increases as well, but you see principal pay down and you start to see your return on investment go up, that's where it starts to get really exciting is these longer time horizons. So being able to get an owner again into that frame of mind is really important and very hard to do from the seat as a working property manager.
I couldn't have said it better myself,
Yeah,
Peter.
I know.
Jeez. I am curious of what your investor portfolio is made of. We hear a lot about accidental landlords, we hear about mom and pop investors, we hear about intentional investors. Where would you say that your owner portfolio kind of falls in those categories?
So here in Columbus, Ohio, we have a really healthy mix between those categories. Ohio, over the last 10 to 15 years, has seen a lot of outside investment from coastal investors who see our property values here as a bargain. And so they buy up often multiple single family rentals and rent them out. And eventually a lot of those people hire property managers. And so a lot of those folks are our customers. But we also have a lot of people who move away and just want to rent out their house. And throughout the different cycles, we've had people who wanted to sell their home but couldn't, or couldn't get the price they wanted due to the cycle in the market or interest rates or whatever. And so they just decide, hey, I'll just rent it out for a number of years. So those are like more of your accidental landlords. So in Columbus, we have a great mix of all different investor types. About half of our rental owners live out of state. So those folks either, like I said, were coastal investors or they used to live here, but they've since moved away.
I know for a fact on our end, when we talk to anybody in either of those categories, like the difference that we hear from somebody, for instance, there was somebody here recently who had 19 properties. We just onboarded their property manager not too long ago. And so he's seen as an intentional investor. He gets on the call with us and he's like, I have been waiting for somebody to do this. And because he's just like, I want to expand my portfolio, and this is now the easiest way to do it, right?
Well, let me tell you something. Even intentional investors have never put together their return calculations, like their return on investment. I can tell you that right now, as an intentional investor myself, and as somebody who knows a lot of them. I don't know a single person who has ever gathered up all of their documents over many years, put them into a spreadsheet, and I'm talking everything, taxes, insurance, all that, not just your tax stuff. Like obviously you have, a bunch of your documents go into your tax return, but I'm talking about putting all those documents together for the specific purpose of calculating your cash on cash return, your return on investment, your return on invested capital, and other metrics, such that you could benchmark the performance of your assets against something like the stock market or treasuries or alternative investments. Now, a lot of people put together a forecast or a pro forma when they buy an asset. That's common. You see that all the time. But you never see people go back and update those spreadsheet with the actuals, which is really interesting. But that's what you guys do. That's what you're able to show with your dashboard is you go and do all that math and you show the investor data and numbers they've never seen before. Even the intentional investors, guaranteed. So that's why I get excited about it, because our industry, the whole business of residential property management, is about taking this asset and constructing a stream of income for the owner of that property to improve their financial position. Otherwise, what are we even doing here? But no one ever measures that, which is crazy to me. It'd be like driving on the highway without a speedometer. Like no one measures the performance of the returns on the assets that we're managing. It does not show up on any dashboard in Appfolio or Buildium or Rentvine or any of them. And it's almost not even talked about. Now, if you go to the multifamily world and you deal with institutional investors who own these big apartment complex communities and stuff, this is all they talk about. That's all they talk about is the returns, because they're professional and they're paid on, making money. But here in the SFR world, it's like an afterthought, or it's not thought about even at all. It's not even an afterthought. It's a never thought. So that's the thing I like about Lineage is we're bringing a transparency to the performance of professional property managers. Now, you could argue that it's not really the performance of the property manager. It's more about the performance of the asset. We're bringing light and data and numbers to the performance of individual single family residential homes as rentals for accidental landlords and even sub institutional investors.
And that really just brings it full circle as well to the communication piece in the end and the less stress owner that then you are managing at that point because they're now educated as a whole of what their asset is doing for them rather than just looking at the
Exactly.
history. And so that is one of the things I truly love about what this team does as well is being able to help, whether they are somebody who has an idea. I love your take on that to where it really opens up an opportunity to where nobody is putting all of that into a spreadsheet and we get to do that for them. And then on top of that, if we do look at the opposite side of things to where we have accidental landlords that couldn't sell their home, now they need to have somebody manage it. They really have no idea what those numbers mean, even if they are getting a fantastic dashboard with some information on it. And so having a human who
Mhm.
is a professional in this conversation, having those conversations with them and hand holding them through the process is my favorite part. I know that AI is incredible and I know that there's a lot that can be done with it. But in this case scenario, having that human behind the conversation is so pertinent and it makes somebody feel more comfortable about exploring the idea of becoming more of an intentional investor. And the other thing of that too is I'll just sit there and say, like, there's more to that conversation than just giving them education of what they have working for them. But on top of that, we're always focused in on, and I think you touched on this a slight bit earlier, is how can we optimize this portfolio at that point? How can we maybe we can help decrease the insurance. We're looking at tax benefit conversations. We're looking at maybe there is a 1031 exchange that needs to happen. Maybe it's just a refinancing opportunity. So, being able to bring that light to them to help increase that cash flow, making them happier investors and owners for the property management team. I mean, it's just such a beautiful synchronicity, and that's not even
Mhm.
just because I work here. I'm
Mhm.
I'm loving that for everyone.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's much needed.
And so your take on it absolutely blew my mind in the best way possible, and you answered all the questions before I even asked them, so thank you for that. I didn't even send you questions, which was impressive. So,
Nope.
this wasn't planned, just in case anybody was
No,
wondering.
I came on cold.
You did.
Yeah.
You did. No, I really appreciate it, Peter. Is there anything else that you feel might have been missed? Anything that you'd like to say to any property manager who might be considering bringing this into their company and even
Yeah.
speaking to the hesitations that they might have?
Yeah, so I think the natural question at this point that anyone listening to this probably has is like, okay, but how does Lineage make money? And that's
Oh,
a great question. It's an important question that everyone should ask before they start working with anybody. And so Lineage makes money, don't worry, but encourage you to reach out to the team and talk through. They've got a really interesting monetization strategy, has a lot to do with monetizing the transactions that occur on their platform and as a result of those conversations, stuff that the investors are paying for anyway. And there's also kind of a referral system back and forth. One of the interesting things about working with Lineage is you'll occasionally get a property under management right from Lineage because they will be working with an investor in a different market who decides to buy in your market and you get the account. And so there is a referral fee associated with that. So chat with them and vice versa, the other way as well, by the way. So chat with them, get those details, satisfy your curiosity as far as like, is this sustainable and how does it all work on the back end? It's pretty straightforward. And yeah, I mean, we've been working with Lineage 2+ years, maybe 3 now, and I don't talk about it a lot, mostly because it's honestly just on autopilot, which I just don't really have. I get like a monthly update from the team and just kind of skim it. All looks good. That's really all there is to it. So yeah, thanks for having me on, Drea. I hope that helped illuminate a little bit about what we're getting value from Lineage and what it's about.
it is a huge referral opportunity for any and all property managers out there. And to your point as well, I would love to hear from you, Peter. And I haven't asked this yet, but how was the onboarding process for you? Because in my world of seeing this now firsthand, I know that onboarding can make or break something when it gets onboarded, right? Whether the team wants to put in they have heavy lifting or not. And I know for a fact that it takes less than an hour for the PM side to get onboarded and the rest of the heavy lifting is on us. I would love to hear what your experience is through your onboarding process.
Yeah, very smooth. I mean, the main thing during onboarding is that, and the Lineage team will provide you with communication to go out to your rental owners. And you can do that all at once, you can stagger it out, but just make sure you review the communication that they suggest that you send. customize it to your tone, your brand, your voice, and send it out however you normally communicate with your rental owners. And once you send out like one or two of those to your current rental owners, they take it all from there. They reach out and say, hey, you may have heard from the RL team, but I'm so and so with Lineage. Would you be interested in a portfolio review? And these guys are not going to cold call and bother your rental owners. I have not seen a single complaint ever from our clients. Because listen, it's not for everybody. Like some clients are just, it's always going to be a no for whatever reason. They do not bother them or cold call them or annoy them with endless, reminders and stuff. And then the only other thing after that is just making sure that your new client onboarding process has a step to introduce the new owner to the Lineage team. So just update your new owner process in Lead Simple or whatever you're using, just to make sure that gets included. Again, they provide, email templates and stuff like that. So pretty easy. No big
Perfect.
technology changeover or anything like that.
Awesome. No, thank you so much, Peter. I'm going to wrap it up for us. Thank you for everybody who's listening, and reach out to me, Drea Buer, Peter.
Not Bauer. I've said it wrong like
Not
25
Bauer.
times.
Peter always gets it wrong, but I still love him for it.
Mm-hmm.
But Drea Buer, my contact information will be everywhere. But I know Peter is always open to helping other property managers. And I know that his Crane community has this opportunity of resources and knowledge base and network to be able to ask questions like these too. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely take a look at that as well. So thank you so much, Peter.